Good Monday morning to you. I hope you had a good holiday weekend. I'm Jane Monreal. You are watching Live Impact News here on WCNC Plus. Back to business, and we have a number of cases that are starting today, starting in Charlotte. Michael Jordan is involved in a case that is the outside federal court right now. As you can see, it is involving Michael Jordan's NASCAR team and suing along with another team, Front Row Motorsports, suing NASCAR essentially for antitrust violations, essentially claiming that NASCAR operates as an illegal monopoly. So that is our crew there live on scene. Also following the case here in New York, there's New York City, a live picture there of Luigi Mangione, the hearing taking place today. This is a federal hearing, and Luis Mangione, of course, is the suspect who is expected to plead. He was the one who shot the CEO back in number of months ago, 6 months ago. So this is the hearing that we are monitoring there, the hallway scene as well. And let's take a look now at the Dedham, Massachusetts court room. This is a live picture here. It is the hearing, or I should say the trial now for Brian Walsh, who is accused of killing his wife there just outside of Boston. Anna Walsh, his wife, who disappeared nearly 3 years ago on New Year's Day 2023. Anna's body never been found. And of course, interesting ties to Dedham, Massachusetts, because if you followed here on Live Impact News several months ago, we followed Karen Reed's trial, who was accused of killing her boyfriend, also out of Dedham, Massachusetts. So a lot happening this morning. We will continue to monitor things all day and really all week, as these cases are just going to get underway any minute now. All right. Here in the Carolinas, we are monitoring, of course, weather. It is cold, so cold I didn't even leave the house yesterday, and cloudy and just kind of a whole damper. But we're expecting even more cold and rain this week with Chris Mulcahy.
The technical term you're looking for is blah.
Blah.
Yeah.
Blick.
Yeah, and that's exactly what tomorrow's going to be, but tomorrow is actually going to be a little more iffy. Yesterday was mainly just drizzle for most of the day. That's when you're kind of walking around like this, where it's just coming at you. You would almost rather just to rain, just because it's just enough. That's just like pesky rain. Nobody wants to be like this all the time. No, it's going to rain tomorrow. This is going to be legitimate, and that's why we have a weather alert period. And our current temperature is 38 degrees right now. Let's get right to it. And our temperatures ranging all over the place. 30 degrees in Morganton, 35 in Hickory. 'Tis the season that a difference of 32 to 38 can be the difference of maybe getting ice, maybe getting snow, maybe getting all rain. And it should be mainly all rain across the area. Only exception is going to be up in the mountains. Focusing in on today, don't worry about it. We actually have a brighter forecast than was really anticipated. It was looking like we could see some. It's much brighter, and it's still going to be, I think, clouds win out, but if there is going to be a sunnier part, it's pretty much the morning, and then hour by hour it does get cloudier through the afternoon, but there will be some bright spots here and there, unlike yesterday that there was zero. Not really a motivating day whatsoever. I was grocery shopping yesterday. I just was yawning the whole time. That's the type of forecast that you have, just because it has that kind of lazy feel to it. Once you get to about 7 o'clock, that's officially when our winter weather advisory is opening up for the mountains, but even though we open up a advisory for the mountains, it is not going to affect McAdenville activities. Officially around 5:30, they have the Christmas tree lighting there. Temperatures will be in the upper 40s, falling to the mid to the lower 40s, and I don't think we see rain here in Charlotte until after midnight. There are signs that maybe you can do after 10. I think it's after midnight, so that shouldn't affect any outdoor activities that you may be doing. So let's get right to it. We are win mentality. That's the when, the impact, and the need. That's tonight into your Tuesday afternoon. But we're going to narrow that down. It is pretty much midnight to noon. That's the hours that I'm really opening up across the area. And let me bring up that graphic. From that point, that's where we're expecting most of the rain. And I think by noon, we're pretty much seeing most of it past and gone. And the biggest deal is this is more of just an impact and a nuisance for your morning commute because you're looking at widespread rain. When we don't have much going on, you have interstate shut down on a sunny day. So anything can go for your morning commute. when you add widespread rain, you know there's going to be a lot more activity. So that's why we're weather alert for really tomorrow. Widespread cold rain. It's a nuisance there because you can have rain and then you can have the cold rain in the 30s. That's miserable. And then once you get to about noon, I think that we're going to fade things out overall. But as I mentioned, we have that winter weather advisory for Watauga, Avery, Ashe, and some of the mountainous areas of Caldwell and Burke County. You can see up to about a quarter inch of rain. The thing is, freezing rain is a self-deprecating factor. So what that means is as it freezes, it actually releases heat back into the atmosphere. So eventually you start to see a little bit more of a warmer temperature. And then once it gets above 32, you're not talking about freezing rain anymore. Because the way freezing rain works is it's actually all part of what's called the warm nose. Yes, just like this nose here. So here's what the warm nose looks like. The warm nose is above our heads. I'm talking about thousands of feet, a couple miles. It's snowing. Even sometimes during the summertime, it's snowing up there because it's a much colder part of the atmosphere. As that starts to work its way down, sometimes you can have in the middle or the lower to middle part of the atmosphere what's called warm air advection, and that's going to allow a little nose of warmer air that's above freezing. If it's shallow, you have a partially melted snowflake that refreezes into an ice pellet. Sleet. When it's a little bit wider, that warms it up to what's called supercool droplets. So when it falls back into freezing temperatures, it'll super freeze on contact, and that is freezing rain. And that's why it can be so tricky. Right now, models are all over the place. Shows an upper bound upwards to about a tenth to about a third of an inch of ice, and then other ones are a little bit more conservative, saying less than a tenth. I think a majority of the area has up to a tenth, and then we see some maybe isolated values from the National Weather Service about a quarter inch. That's usually bad when it's widespread, but since it's a little isolated, I'm not as concerned. So I'm not saying this isn't a huge impact. It's just that there's much bigger scenarios. So yes, you are going to be seeing this for several hours, but it could be a whole lot worse. So here it is. It starts right around 11 o'clock. You could see signs of wintry precipitation rolling in anytime between about 7 and 11, but it's really close to midnight that we really get this machine going. By the early morning hours, check it out. Rain, I think, is completely widespread for all 22 of the counties that we cover here for North and South Carolina by 4 a.m. It's at that point, notice the temperature that I have there, 33 degrees around Boone. At that point, I think that our freezing rain window is coming to an end. Much heavier rain as well. The worst case scenario is when you have the mid-20s and you have freezing rain because it's tough to overcome that, especially with this intensity. That's where you pick up like about the half-inch marks that can bring down power lines. This is not that scenario. This is a winter weather advisory. We would have a winter storm warning or ice storm warning if that was going to be the case. This rain is going to continue most of your morning commute, but we start to see the back end of this by the late morning, and then by the early afternoon, it's getting out of here. If we're patient enough, you will see that sunshine, and then we might see some flurries on the back end of this, and then we cool back down. Where realistically, your Wednesday morning will be the coldest morning that we have in the near term. We're expecting our lows to drop down to about 30 degrees. By the way, the coldest that we've been has been right around 28 degrees. And then we had 32 degrees for your Thursday morning. So that is going to be the biggest highlighter that I have going forward. However, let's jump to the 7-day forecast. There is another chance for rain that is worth highlighting and looking at. So your 7-day forecast brought to you by the Jerry Hunt Super Center. We are down to the upper 40s. You have that one red bar. I'm considering moving that just to a half bar because it's not affecting the afternoon, but we'll just leave it to really make a point. And then we have the lower 50s with increasing clouds on Thursday. And then look at that, 41 back again on Friday. This time of year, if you look at the top, under my 7-day forecast, I always have the averages for the day. 58 is usually the average high. 37 is the average low. For our highs, we are completely below that for the foreseeable future. I don't see any big-time warm-ups, and even I think once we get the warm-up, we're going to be averaging the lower to the mid-50s anyways, because it is actually the beginning of what we call meteorological winter. Welcome to it. All right. And I know everyone's super excited about that. So meteorological winter just means about how we keep our record keeping. So in the meteorological world, we don't wait for the Gregorian calendar or looking to the stars to see if it's, does spring start on the 21st or the 22nd? Is it the 19th or the 20th for the equinox? Instead, it's December, January, and February, flat out. Those 3 months are winter. We just got done with astronomical or meteorological fall, which was September, October, and November, which, by the way, nothing was really too astronomically crazy with that. I was looking at some stats. It was within the top 20 for the warmest on record, but nothing really broke a record outside of that. And as you can see here for our averages, we start off meteorological winter about 58 degrees. We cool down to pretty much 52 for the month of January, and then we start to warm up even around the 60-degree point by the end of February. What's really staggering about the 7-day forecast that I'm showing you, or I can even take a step further, the 10-day forecast, everything is below normal and actually more typical for what you would expect for a typical January week. So we start off much cooler, which is interesting. It's almost like we're making up for lost time because of how warm it was, close to 80 degrees during times of November. And speaking of, since November is over, we also have to have our November recap. The highest point that we had was 80 degrees. The lowest was 28 degrees, not 29 there. That's a mistake on my part. But one interesting stat there, the little white bar, I'll read it carefully, is this was the 42nd November that we've had at least a trace of snow, and that's dating back to 1878. It wasn't wet at all. We had more dry days than anything in November, so this was actually the 8th driest and the 16th warmest month because we had a lot of ups and downs, some major time swings that came along with this. So really interesting stuff there. So on to December, it is looking to be well below normal, not something that you typically see for this time of year, and our lows will drop down to freezing here and there, but much colder than we typically start off meteorological winter and the month of December.
Oh my gosh. So we are making up for lost time, or for October, for a warm October.
The best word to use in meteorology is called equilibrium. So we know that. We know we've learned that in science at one point.
Yeah.
The atmosphere is always trying to find its middle point. And the reason why you have big temperature swings and severe weather is because you have the adjustments of the atmosphere trying to hit that equilibrium. So that's exactly what's happening here. So oftentimes when you have the big time warm-ups, usually to balance everything out, so everything is equal in life, the circle of life, you have to have the big swing downs, which we like the swing ups compared to the swing downs for sure.
Sure do. All right. Simba, Circle of Life.
Savannah.
All right, Chris Mulcahy, thank you for bringing us that, getting the warm coats all piled up. Handy, right by the door.
I have 7 in my car just because we hit the time of year that it was cold in the morning and then it's warmer in the afternoon, so I have to bring all those inside and just reset.
Same. Thanks. All right, and we will be right back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Back here now at 9:15 on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Again on this Monday morning, back from a long holiday weekend. We are following a number of cases. The first happening right here in the Queen City in Charlotte, a federal case where Michael Jordan's NASCAR team, along with Ford Motor team, is also joined with this federal court case that could throw NASCAR into turn it upside down and really turn it on its head the way that teams are formed. They are suing NASCAR. This is a federal court house right there in Uptown, as we are, and Michael Jordan already went into the courthouse from our understanding, but this case starting today. Also in New York City, a live shot of the hallway where this is a pretrial hearing of Luigi Mangione, the man accused of fatally shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel last year, returning to New York City and the state court today for what is going to be, it sounds like, a 3-part complex pretrial hearing, and could also shape how this prosecution unfolds. And happening right now in Dedham, Massachusetts, this is opening statements of a Massachusetts man accused of killing and dismembering his wife, Brian Walsh. So opening statements happening right now. Let's go ahead and listen in on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
All right. Are there any more preliminary matters? We have 16 jurors in the House. My intention with regard to them is to inquire of them first thing now, after I greet them, and ensure myself by asking the 3 questions that I go through. It's actually 4 in this case because I added the social media, no news media. I'll presume for the sake of argument right now that all of them are going to have been obedient to that. If they aren't, of course, we'll deal with it and we'll address it. And we'll go from there. If we get, we still have 16 in the box, we'll swear them in. And then we'll be off and running. Any questions about that?
No.
Come up.
Your Honor, no question about that. There are some housekeeping matters. Counsel wished to have 4 witnesses recognized. I have them here. And in addition, we had a series of stipulations that we wanted to present to the court.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. And forgive me because I was focusing on the Richard Walker email. I didn't hear your judgment on the hole in the ceiling.
On the what?
The hole in the ceiling.
The entirety of that motion is denied.
Okay. So with that, I could have the officers that counsel wishes to recognize be brought in, and we could have them recognized right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to sign that? Sure.
I'd like to bring up one issue.
Before this?
It doesn't matter, just I'll wait till they're recognized and I'll bring it up.
All right, good morning, everyone. Just identify yourself for the record.
Gary,
good morning.
morning.
David Chico, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So you're all in here because the defense wants you to be recognized, which means that you're under court order. You need to make yourself available for this trial whenever you're told, and the lawyers will be back in contact with you when you are actually needed as the case goes along. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And you agree to come back?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, I'm handing up to the clerk 3 series of stipulations. One is concerning the Richard Walker email, now that it's going to be admissible. We believe that stipulation could be read to the jury. There is also a stipulation concerning the chain of custody of the known DNA samples, which would negate the need to call certain witnesses from the FBI. And then finally, there's stipulations. This third one does not need to be read to the jury, but it's just for the record and could be marked as for ID, concerning financial records. And so we were going to have that. And then also, I believe we have a stipulation concerning the federal conviction and federal charges.
All right. So I'll have these all marked for identification at this point. I don't usually send stipulations to the jury. I just consider it like any other evidence, and by sending it in as a special something, it seems to me to improperly highlight that evidence. They've got to remember what the stipulations are. That said, if they ask me back what the stipulations were, I typically answer that question.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I don't send them in. So I'll have them marked individually for identification. Where are we right now with regard to that?
D will be on next slide.
All right, D for dog is the stipulation regarding Richard Walker. E will be the stipulation regarding the DNA samples of Anna Walsh and Brian Walsh. F will be the stipulation regarding authentication of records. And G will be the stipulation regarding the federal prosecution of the defendant. And when we get to the point in the case that you wish me to read those stipulations, just cue me by ID number that this is the time you want them to be read.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right?
That's it for the Commonwealth for housekeeping.
All right. Attorney Tipton.
First, the preliminary instructions, we're asking that no consciousness of guilt preliminary instruction be given.
I don't have one in there.
Okay.
All I have is the elements of first-degree murder by premeditation and the normal, beyond a reasonable doubt, and presumption of innocence, all that stuff.
Okay.
But there's nothing about COG in there.
Okay. And secondly, our understanding was that sentencing was going to occur today. Are we wrong about that?
I don't know that we set the day to take place, but I also don't think it's going to have bearing on the ruling on that other motion if you're concerned about that.
I guess the next question is, does the court know when sentencing would be scheduled?
Well, we can talk about it. Nobody was pressing the issue, but now maybe that's changed. I think when we took the plea last Tuesday, or maybe it was the Tuesday before, right? We had talked about giving the Commonwealth sufficient time to get a victim impact statement in. I haven't seen that. At some point, it sort of felt to me like maybe we just do it all together. If there's a conviction at the end, and if not, I'll just sentence him on the other two charges. But I don't have any, firm beliefs about whether it needs to be done before or after. So if either party wants me to do it sooner rather than later, put the other side on notice that the victim impact statements need to be to me by a certain date so that I consider them. And if there's anything beyond in writing that the defense wants me to consider, I'm happy to consider that too. So.
All right, that is a live look there at the opening statements in Dedham, Massachusetts of Brian Walsh, a man accused of killing his wife back in 2019. We will get back to that here shortly. It sounds like and looks like they're just doing some housekeeping and administrative procedure before they start their opening statements. In the meantime, I want to take you out live now to California, where a vigil is taking place in Stockton from the weekend's shooting where 4 people were killed in a mass shooting, 3 of them children, 1 adult, and 11 others hurt. And the latest now on what happened over the weekend in Stockton, California, here on Live Impact News.
One person said they heard gunshots for what they described as a full minute, followed by screaming and people calling for ambulances. Another we spoke with describes hearing the gunshots from his home, then getting up and seeing everything unfold in front of his eyes.
I heard the gunshots, multiple rounds, well over 20. And then I walked out, and what I saw were a lot of people scattering, running, shouting, screaming, crying. Then I saw a few cars pull up, some parents coming up and being very, very upset, crying, asking where their kids are. So it was a kid's birthday party. It sounded like some of the parents had dropped maybe their kids off or relatives or whatever, and maybe they're going to come back and pick them up. I don't know. And they came back to this. It was the mass shooting. They had a mass triage of ambulance lined up on both sides of Lucille, coming from both sides, and they were loading them up on one side of Lucille and the opposite side out here on Thornton Road.
And that is the latest on the shooting that happened over the weekend in Stockton, California. Right now, here in Charlotte, we are covering the first day of what will be Irina's Law. It goes into effect today. Our Destiny Richards covering the latest and how that impacts the community here on WCNC Plus.
Yeah, this law is one of the biggest changes in criminal justice the state has seen in years, and local leaders say its impact and the work still ahead starts today. Irina's Law brings several major changes, including ending written promise to appear for certain violent offenders, requiring mandatory mental health evaluations in specific cases, and fast-tracking death penalty appeals so they're heard much sooner. The only funding attached to the law provides 10 new prosecutors and 5 legal assistants for Mecklenburg County. These changes will also mean more people behind bars at a time when Mecklenburg County's jail is already at capacity. Sheriff Gary McFadden says they can't handle the impact without more staff, and that any new funding to do that will have to come from the county.
Funding and bodies. Personnel, that's what we're going to have funding and personnel. And that is to attempt to achieve success.
State leaders who support Irina's Law say today marks the start of real accountability, but there are local officials who say this is just the first step in a system that needs more resources. I'll send it back to you guys in studio.
So, Destiny, what does this mean for public safety?
Yeah, so this is mainly about getting violent offenders off the street. It's about Republicans in the General Assembly pushing for a system where pre-trial release just does not happen, where it lets people off the street or back on the street who can commit violent crimes like what happened back in August. So we know that that is one of the biggest things. And then they also want, these court proceedings to be sped up as well. But the argument for local officials here, as well as the Democrats who oppose this, is that it's really going to put a strain again on the jail, but also for an understaffed court system that we have here in Mecklenburg County as well. There's also those mental health evaluations, so finding people who are have mental health issues that could possibly cause these crimes, addressing that root cause. But they argue that it doesn't do enough for mental health. It's not a larger mental health reform, which they say is really needed. So while this is one step in addressing public safety, there are people at the local level here that say it's not enough, and again, they need more resources to really make a change. But what we could see at the local level starting today with this new law really is a push to try to keep people in jail, especially that can commit violent crimes.
And that was our Destiny Richards covering the latest on Irina's Law that will go into effect again starting today. As we come up on 9:30 here, about a minute and a half away, let's take a look now. We've got some live pictures of your stock market, of course, being the first full week back at it. NASDAQ getting ready to open on this Cyber Monday. So we're just about a minute out there. Don't they look lovely? And the New York Stock Exchange opening bell, their process for the morning is about to begin as well. After having taken off, Thanksgiving Day, reduced hours on Friday, how are the markets going to come back this afternoon, or today, I should say, first full week back at it, returning for this last month of the year. And as we talk about Cyber Monday, producer James here, and you're already having some direct experience.
I had some sticker shock. So there's been a lot of headlines lately, Jane, about the AI stocks and the influences they're having on the overall market. Well, if you remember 2020 when we had a supply shortage of computer parts, chips. Oh, I was trying to buy a new computer this weekend for a little holiday shopping, and the price of some of the components are skyrocketing because they're in demand for AI production.
Is that right? Look at that. So that, I mean, you look at this, and on a daily basis, or the everyday person, that's what it translates to.
The
parts going up.
The manufacturers are going to have to raise their prices because their suppliers are raising their prices.
Makes sense. All right, but we have smiling faces from the Big Apple. NASDAQ, the futures looked pretty positive when we closed out Friday into this morning before the bell. And now, look at that, 9:30 on the dot, waiting for the New York Stock Exchange. Hit the gavel. Did they read? Did I miss it? Okay. Well,
I missed it too, but I presume they did it.
Okay. Again, and I heard from Black Friday, there were already positive returns in the black since Friday. That's pretty amazing. As people are hitting the stores, I mean, gosh, they hit the computers, the stores, and today being Cyber Monday, the deals continue, we anticipate. So we will keep an eye on the markets for you, NASDAQ and the Stock Exchange. How about a break here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus? Time right now is 9:31. At 9:33, back on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus on this Monday morning, following a long holiday weekend for most. Back at it now in the courthouse. We have a number of cases that are starting today. One of them is out of Massachusetts, Dedham, Massachusetts to be exact. The trial for Brian Walsh, where opening statements are expected to happen after some administrative and housekeeping rules by the judge there. This is the murder trial of Brian Walsh, the father accused of killing and dismembering his wife. This trial that we are anticipating and following will be expected to last 3 to 4 weeks. But let's go ahead and see if we can catch opening statements now on Live Impact News.
As a judge, I am responsible to make sure this case is tried fairly, efficiently, and according to the law. I must make sure that you see and hear only evidence that's allowed under what we call our rules of evidence. Those rules determine what evidence the lawyers may and may not present to you. The purpose of these rules is to make sure that what you see and hear during this trial is relevant to the case and appropriate for you to consider. If one of the lawyers says objection, that means that that lawyer thinks a particular answer or an exhibit that's being offered violates those rules of evidence. If I'm not persuaded by the objection, I will say overruled. That means that the witness may answer the question or the other party may show you the exhibit, and you may consider the answer or the exhibit as evidence. If I instead say sustained, that means that the witness may not answer the question or that the proffering party may not show you the exhibit, because under our rules you may not consider the answer or the exhibit. If I sustain an objection, You may not talk about or try to guess or speculate what the answer might have been. There are times when I may say to you, disregard something or allow a motion to strike, something that you've already heard or seen. If that happens, that means that the testimony or exhibit that I strike, you must disregard it and you may not consider it. As the judge in the case throughout the trial, there may be times when I give you mid-trial instructions on a particular area of law. And at the end of the trial, I will give you, as I said, those detailed oral and written instructions. Let me next talk about the role of the lawyers. The lawyers in this case have their own important role. Their job is to bring to your attention the evidence and arguments that best support their position. They may also object to evidence, as I just mentioned, offered by the other side. Please don't hold it against any of the lawyers if they make an objection. The lawyers have to let me know when they think there's a potential evidentiary issue that I need to decide. Let me next talk about your role. Jurors, you have the most important role in this trial. After you have heard and seen all of the evidence in the case, you will decide who and what to believe, and whether the prosecution has proved the defendant is guilty of the crime charge based on the legal principles I explained to you. You must decide this case based only on the evidence you see and hear inside this courtroom and on my instructions on the law. You may not decide this case based on suspicion, guesswork, or speculation. The evidence consists of the testimony of the witnesses that you'll see from this witness stand, as you recall it, and any other documents or things that become exhibits in the case. Other things that you see and hear during this trial are not evidence. Again, the opening statements and closing arguments, not evidence. And the questions that the attorneys ask, they're not evidence either. A witness's answers are evidence, but a lawyer's questions are not. A very important part of your job as jurors is to decide who and what to believe. Whether testimony is contradicted or it is not, it is up to you to decide whether you believe it. You may believe everything a witness says, part of what a witness says, or none of it. The same is true of each exhibit. You must decide whether you believe what it shows or you do not. In deciding who and what to believe, you should ask and consider some important questions. First, was the witness honestly trying to tell the truth or deliberately lying? Though witnesses take an oath to tell the truth, sometimes a witness says things that a witness knows are false. If you conclude that a witness lied to you about something, then of course you should not believe that part of the testimony. Second, was the witness accurate? Or did the witness get something wrong without meaning to do so? Sometimes a witness may recall seeing or hearing something, but still be mistaken. If you conclude that a witness tried to be truthful, but that some part of that person's testimony wasn't accurate, then you should not consider the inaccurate testimony. I have no opinion about who or what you should believe, or about how you should decide this case. So please don't take anything that I do or say throughout this trial to suggest to you what you should believe or how you should decide this case. I want to next talk about fairness. Our system of justice depends on judges like me and jurors like you being able and willing to make careful and fair decisions. All people deserve fair and equal treatment in our system of justice, regardless of their race, national origin, religion, age, ability, gender, sexual orientation, education, income level, or any other personal characteristic. You have agreed to be fair, and I'm sure that you want to be fair, but it's not always easy. One difficulty comes from our own built-in expectations and assumptions, and they exist even if we're not aware of them, and even if we believe we don't have them. Some of you may have heard of this as called as implicit bias. And that's what I'm talking about now. As a judge, I have the same problem as everyone else. So let me share a few strategies that I found to be useful. First, slow down. Don't rush to any decision. Hasty decisions are more likely to reflect stereotypes or hidden biases. Second, keep an open mind. Avoid drawing conclusions until the end of the case when you and your fellow jurors deliberate. Remember that when you deliberate, you will have all the evidence and all the time you need to make a careful decision. So there truly is no need to start making your mind up before then. Third, you should listen closely to the witnesses. That's the best way to ensure that you decide this case based on the evidence and the law instead of upon unsupported assumptions. Fourth, as you listen to the testimony about the people involved in this case, consider them as individuals rather than as members of any particular group. Finally, I might ask myself, would I view the evidence differently if the people were from different groups, such as different racial, ethnic, or gender identity groups? At the end of the case, I will remind you of these strategies and ask you to focus on the evidence instead of any unsupported assumptions you may have. All we ask is that you individually and as a group do your best to resolve this case based on the evidence and the law without sympathy, bias, or prejudice, to the best of your ability as human beings. I want to turn now to certain legal principles and rules that you must follow in this case, and I will discuss these again in more detail at the end of the case. But here are some key things that you need to know from the beginning. First, let me talk to you about the presumption of innocence. As I told you during the jury selection process, every person who is accused of a crime is presumed to be innocent of the crime. Mr. Walsh is presumed innocent of the charge in this case. That means that you must consider Mr. Walsh to be innocent now and must still consider him to be innocent at the end of the trial unless the prosecution has proved beyond a reasonable doubt through evidence presented during the trial that the defendant committed the crime charged. And I will explain what I mean by reasonable doubt in just a moment. The defendant does not have to do anything to convince you he is innocent. He does not have to explain anything to the jury. The defendant does not have to testify, call or question any witnesses, or provide any evidence at all, because you must presume he is innocent. Instead, it is up to the Commonwealth to prove the charge against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden of proof never shifts to the defendant. At the end of the trial, after you've seen and heard all of the evidence, you will deliberate with each other, meaning you'll discuss the evidence and decide on a unanimous verdict. If you have a reasonable doubt about the defendant's guilt on the charge, then your verdict must be not guilty on the charge. You may find the defendant guilty of the charge only if all 12...
You've been watching live, the judge giving some final instructions to the jury on this first day of the Brian Walsh trial out of Denham, Massachusetts, something that we will follow here on Live Impact News. First, a break on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. At 9:46 here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, want to talk about some international news right now, starting with what's happening here with both the House and Senate now conducting inquiries into a reported second U.S. strike on a drug smuggling boat in the Caribbean. Alice Barr in Washington with the latest for NBC News.
This morning, a growing push for answers about the U.S. boat strikes off Venezuela, targeting alleged drug smugglers. President Trump backing Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth amid new reporting the Pentagon carried out a second strike on a boat to kill survivors of the first hit.
Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence in it.
A U.S. official and a source familiar with the actions tell NBC News it happened on September 2nd, and the Washington Post, citing two sources, was first to report the second strike came because Secretary Hegseth had ordered all on board killed.
We'll look into it, but no, I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike.
Critics in Congress calling it a war crime.
So this rises to the level of a war crime if it's true. And the questions that we've been asking for months are, give us the evidence that the folks on board were really narco traffickers.
Now, Republican leaders of the Senate and House Armed Services Committees launching inquiries promising rigorous oversight.
If that occurred, that would be very serious, and I agree that would be an illegal act.
When people want to surrender, you don't kill them, and they have to pose an imminent threat.
The Homeland Security Secretary disputed the account, while Secretary Hegseth posted, "Our current operations in the Caribbean are lawful," and the Attorney General defended the administration's approach to fight drug cartels.
They are narco-terrorists. What you're showing on the screen right now are terrorists, and they are being blown up.
A series of U.S. boat strikes have killed more than 80 people over the past few months. The Trump administration has been ramping up its military presence in the Caribbean, and President Trump posted that airlines should consider the Venezuelan airspace closed. Asked whether that meant an airstrike was imminent, the president said not to read anything into it, while also confirming he recently spoke by phone with Venezuela's leader without offering details. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Also from the Trump administration, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff set to travel to Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Because of the Ukraine-Russia deal, there is still a proposal on the table for the latest peace deal. Richard Engel now reports from southern Ukraine.
I'm now in southern Ukraine, an area that is often targeted by Russian forces. And even though right now there is an intense diplomatic effort underway to try and end this war after nearly 4 very long years and hundreds of thousands dead on both sides, there is no ceasefire. And the Russian attacks continue in an unrelenting way. There were Russian attacks over the weekend, killing at least one person in an apartment complex near Kyiv. There was another Russian attack to the east of here in the city of Dnipro, and at least 4 people were killed there, according to local officials. But despite the ongoing violence, there is this determined effort right now between Ukraine and the Trump administration to try and get on to the same page, to try and come up with a more unified negotiating position to present to Vladimir Putin potentially tomorrow. And that's when Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is due to be in Russia meeting with Putin to try and come up with terms to finally end this war. Richard Engel, NBC News, outside Mykolaiv, Ukraine.
And Pope Leo is bringing a message of peace and Christian-Muslim coexistence to Lebanon today. His visit, of course, comes at a time for Lebanon after years of economic crisis and the Beirut port blast. That happened in 2020. Claudio Lavanga reports from Beirut.
On his first full day in Lebanon on Monday, Pope Leo visited a pilgrimage site of the Maronite Catholics, the largest Eastern Catholic community in the Middle East. In his speech, he once again called for peace in Lebanon and in the world, but also called for love to win over hate. As he said, it's the only way to free ourselves from injustice and oppression, even when he said we are betrayed by people and organizations that ruthlessly exploit the desperation of those who have no alternative. A message of peace. He's expected to repeat an inter-religious meeting with the leaders of some of the many religious denominations in this country, and especially a message of hope. He will no doubt relay to the young Lebanese people when he meets them this evening in a town near Beirut, many of whom were forced to leave in the past decade as Lebanon went through political uncertainty, the collapse of its economy, an explosion at the port behind me that killed more than 200 people and injured thousands more, and more recently, the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah.
And happening right now, the Pope is actually at an interreligious meeting at Martyrs Square in Beirut with other special guests and other religious leaders. Let's go ahead and listen in on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Lebanon. And we are all proud of being citizens of this country. Vatican has always expressed in concrete ways its solidarity with Lebanon, with the people of Lebanon. Your visit indeed is an eloquent manifestation of this continuous solidarity of Vatican regarding Lebanon. I believe that your visit is also a wake-up call, a challenge to all of us to deepen the internal cohesion, the sense of togetherness, the Islamo-Christian coexistence in Lebanon. Thank you very much indeed for your visit.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى سيدنا ونبينا محمد خاتمهم وآله وأصحابه الطاهرين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
All right, there's a good opportunity now to take a 2-minute break. We will regroup on the other side on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. $9:58's the time on this Monday morning. Back to school, back to work. Hopefully you had a good holiday weekend. For those who waited out all of the get back home weather and traffic yesterday, might be in for a rude awakening today, because there are delays. That wintry weather that is headed this way, or is here right now in the Carolinas, definitely impacting some travel. We have Amy Kiley reporting as one winter storm departs, another on its way.
Winter weather continues to hinder travelers coming back from their Thanksgiving destinations. Forecasters say a new storm system is taking shape today in the Mid-South, near where Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas meet. They predict snow in much of the northeastern U.S. this week and heavy rain south of there. This system follows a previous one that snarled travel over the weekend.
Winter weather can always be impactful, but this is definitely one for the books for sure.
Indiana police say 45 vehicles were in this pileup Saturday with no major injuries. Delta says no one was hurt when this plane slid off an Iowa runway yesterday. FlightAware reports roughly 12,000 delays and 1,000 U.S. cancellations yesterday. It says Chicago's O'Hare Airport was the hardest hit.
We were pushed back because it was delayed for a couple of hours. Then we were able to get another flight. That one was delayed like another 30 minutes to an hour.
FlightAware says the busiest airport in the world racked up delays too.
The concern is that the flight would be canceled. If it's delayed, we've got some family here who's on standby to come back and pick us up. So we'll see how it goes.
That's even though it's in Atlanta, which did not get snow.
The aviation system is really interconnected, and it can have a domino effect. So you can be outrightly impacted even without being in that area that's seeing weather.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
One.
Des told me that after.
And this is a live picture right now. It's Charlotte Douglas. It looks pretty nice out there, but still a good idea to check your flights in and out of Charlotte. Also have a picture here in Philadelphia from our friends there at WPVI. So again, it can't be driven home enough to go ahead and check your flights. As we move from winter weather that we will be monitoring here, of course, on WCNC Charlotte and being weather impact alert for tomorrow, we want to take you back out to Dedham, Massachusetts. If you're with us here at the top of the hour, it's a case where Brian Walsh, a father, is accused of murdering and dismembering his wife, Anna Walsh, back in 2023. Opening statements happening right now. This trial expected to last 3 to 4 weeks.
She had purchased a townhouse in Washington, D.C., and she was expecting to have her family come with. However, Brian and the children had stayed in Massachusetts. And the reason is that Brian had previously pled guilty to a count of fraud in the Boston Federal District Courthouse. But he hadn't been sentenced yet. Now, he was accused of owing over $400,000 of restitution. At this point in time, Anna was the breadwinner for the family, and she had moved to D.C. She was still commuting back and forth, but looking to have the family join her in D.C. And Brian, too. However, when she bought the townhouse, she did this with the aid of a real estate agent by the name of William Fastow. She was introduced to Mr. Fastow from her former boss, Jim Mootler. Mr. Fastow will testify. And he will tell you that they became friends, and that friendship became romantic. And that carried on into November of 2022, when Anna needed to go visit her mother, who was sick back in Belgrade, Serbia. Anna flew to Dublin, Ireland, the weekend of Thanksgiving, and Mr. Fastow joined her for that weekend. She then flew and visited her sick mother in Serbia, and then would return back to the United States. Mr. Fastow, after Dublin, would go back to Washington, D.C. But Anna missed Thanksgiving with Brian and the children. And then on Christmas Eve that same year, Anna went out to dinner with Mr. Fastow. They went out to dinner in Annapolis with another couple. And she stayed the night. And she was supposed to get a flight out on Christmas Day. But she couldn't get a flight. So she had to drive up from Washington, D.C. to Cohasset. And she missed Christmas Eve and most of Christmas Day with Brian. She would fly back to Washington, D.C. And on December 29th, she would go to dinner with one of her friends, who will testify before you. And that friend will say that she was uncharacteristically tired and emotional. You'll also hear from a series of witnesses that dealt with Anna Walsh right before New Year's. She returned back to Cohasset on December 30th, and she was going to stay with the family until January 3rd. You'll hear how she went to a barre class, B-A-R-R-E. It's an intensive ballet class. You'll hear from the instructor, who will say that she did exceedingly well in that class. A person who was with her in a nail salon will testify. She got her nails done on New Year's Eve. And Mr. Mootler will testify. He went over to the Walsh family residence on New Year's Eve for dinner. 3 adults were there. It was Mr. Mootler, Brian, and Anna. He got there around 8:30. He brought some snacks for the kids. Actually got to play with the oldest child. And he spent the night talking to his friends. He'd characterize them as jovial. They shared champagne. They weren't drunk. They were enjoying the new year. They actually signed the champagne box. And you'll see that, where they were looking forward to the new year. Brian cooked. Brian was attentive. Brian also said to Mr. Mootler that night that he had lost his phone, it had been misplaced, but he had felt free as a result of it. Mr. Mootler left that home on New Year's Day at 1:30 a.m. And there was no mention of a work emergency in Washington, D.C. that would require Anna to fly out or leave the family home at 6 or 7 a.m. that day. Now on January 4th, after Hugh Dunleavy had called the Cohasset Police Department, the Cohasset Police Department dispatched Officer Greg Lorenz to go speak to Mr. Walsh at his home. Officer Lawrence went. He was met outside by Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh informed Officer Lawrence that Anna had left on January 1st, had taken a Uber or Lyft to Logan Airport to fly out to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Gave her a phone number for Anna Walsh, described her as 5'2", that she was 39 years old, approximately 115 pounds. He hadn't heard her. Officer Lawrence went back to the Cohasset Police Department, worked with other Cohasset police officers, trying to find any connection to Uber or Lyft or local taxi cabs. Cohasset Police would then begin the process of pinging Anna's phone. You're going to get to see the records from that, but essentially the process involves the cell phone carrier, in this case Verizon, sending a signal out to the phone to try and locate it. And the Verizon records will show that the last time that phone that belonged to Anna Walsh interacted with the network was shortly after 3 a.m. on January 2nd. And when it did so, it was in the area of the Walsh home. That same day, Cohasset Police also tasked Detective Schmidt with investigating this case. He and Officer Lawrence would go back to the Walsh family residence at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway and interview Brian Walsh. And he recorded it. You'll get to hear the recording. And Brian will talk about how Anna was commuting back and forth from Cohasset to Washington for work, how there were some issues with his federal case, and how Mr. Mutlu had come over for dinner that night on New Year's Eve, and how Anna had to leave between 6 and 7 on January 1st. He also, in that interview, described what Anna was wearing when she left the home. Blue-gray hunter boots, a black jacket, and an Hermes watch. So Sergeant Schmidt will testify before you, and he will tell you that he worked on this missing person investigation and called in additional resources to help. On the 5th, he had his own department do a search of the woods near the family home. On the 6th, he called in a task force made of several different police departments to do further searching of the woods in and around the Walsh family home. Contacted the state police to use their resources. He also got the opportunity to speak to Mr. Walsh on January 5th, January 7th, and January 8th. And when he did those interviews, he was accompanied by detectives from the state police. And those interviews were recorded. And you'll get to hear those interviews. And Mr. Walsh, during those interviews, will explain that he and Anna were happily married. He had no knowledge of any extramarital affair. That Anna had her dream job. That it was taking care of the family. And conversely, he didn't take a salary this year out of his company that was a consulting company. He told the police that he owed over $400,000 in restitution on his federal matter. That this case was causing stress on his marriage. That he might have to go to jail. He said that they were very happy and that the biggest problem was that they were apart. Brian also told the police that Anna's job had caused her to miss Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with the family. And that Anna traveling to visit her sick mom caused her to miss Thanksgiving with the family. And that he did not want to have an argument with Anna about missing another holiday on January 1st. He had a discussion with her about Christmas Day. He was concerned that by him looking around trying to find her, that she had embarrassed her. So he tells the police, I didn't want to have an argument. So I understood she was going to come back, and she left for that emergency at work. You'll also have access to financial records that will show that Anna Walsh had approximately $200,000 in accounts at Fidelity, and that there was over $1 million in life insurance in Anna Walsh, and that Brian Walsh was the beneficiary of those policies. And in addition to the Cohasset Police, the Massachusetts State Police also worked with them on trying to find Anna. You're going to hear from two troopers in particular, Trooper Nicholas Torino and Trooper Connor Keith. They are digital forensic specialists. They have special training in examining computers, tablets, phones, and in this matter, they had the opportunity to examine a MacBook, iPads, and cell phones that were at the Walsh house. And they will explain that on Christmas Day, when Anna had missed Christmas Eve and was, after spending the evening with Mr. Fastow, and was driving up from Washington, D.C., the cell phone that Brian Walsh was using looked up Mr. Fastow on the internet. And that on December 27th, a MacBook that used the Apple ID for Brian Walsh, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, researched best strategies to divorce for a man, best state to divorce for a man, Washington, D.C. divorce laws. On December 29th, Brian Walsh's cell phone was researching buildings that Anna Walsh managed for Tishman Speyer and emergencies she had handled for them in the past. Trooper Guarino will also explain to you the internet history of that MacBook that had Brian Walsh's Apple ID beginning on January 1st. At 4:54 a.m., the MacBook searched best way to dispose of a body, and then went to similar websites for more than an hour. At 6:24 a.m., same day, the same device searched how long for someone to missing to inherit, how long missing to be dead, can you throw away body parts? Later on that morning, on January 1st at 9:33 a.m., the MacBook went to...
We need to do some business here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Back in 2 minutes. 10:15 on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Jane Monreal, and we have been watching a couple of live feeds coming into the WCNC Charlotte newsroom. One from the Middle East. This is in Beirut, where Pope Leo is visiting Lebanon and a number of religious leaders. This is right now an interreligious meeting at Martyrs Square. Big production there happening in Beirut. Take you back out to the homeland, U.S., where just outside of the federal court building in New York City, we are waiting for the arrival of Luigi Mangione, the man accused of fatally shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside Manhattan Hotel last year. Expected to be in court, make his appearance starting this week for an evidentiary hearing that is expected to be about a week long, but it is going to involve 3 parts. They might be talking up to 28 witnesses in this federal hearing. And then back here in Dedham, Massachusetts, this is Brian Walsh you're looking at right now, a live image of him, where opening statements are being given by the lawyers in the murder trial for Brian Walsh, who is accused of killing his wife back in 2023, Anna Walsh, whose body has still yet to be found. We continue to listen in on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
With cash. And you'll see the surveillance video from the Lowe's in Danvers, where a white man wearing a mask and dark hair buys several items that cost more than $400 using cash, including a Tyvek suit and cutting instruments such as shears, snips, and a hacksaw. Investigators will explain how the cell phone location data from the iPhone SE shows that it went to a Home Goods in the morning of January 2nd, and that Brian's iPhone 13 mini went to a Home Depot in Rockland in the afternoon of January 2nd. You will see the surveillance videos from those stores. You'll see a white man with dark hair at Home Goods buying scented candles and area rugs. And you'll see a white man with dark hair at the Home Depot buying more cleaning supplies. 20 pounds of baking soda, mop, buckets, and a hatchet. The investigators will also explain to you that Brian Walsh's cell phone on January 3rd was located near apartment complexes in Brockton. You'll see the surveillance videos from some of the apartment complexes, including one of Chatham West. You'll see someone going to the dumpster and then leave. The investigators will also tell you that on January 5th, Brian Walsh's cell phone was in the area of dumpsters and a trash compactor by his mother's apartment complex in Swampscott, and that this was before he was interviewed by Detective Schmidt later that night. On January 9th, the police went to those dumpsters, and they took that trash compactor and that dumpster to a facility in Peabody, where they searched the contents of both. And they found an Hermes watch, blue-gray hunter boots, a black coat, a COVID vaccination card with Anna Walsh's name on it, rugs, a Tyvek suit, a hammer, shears, snips, a hatchet, and a hacksaw. The police will tell you that these items were packaged and brought back to a laboratory, and they were brought there for examination. And how some of these items were examined for DNA. And the DNA was compared to samples they had from Anna and Brian. And scientists from the state DNA lab will identify DNA of Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh on the Tyvek suit. They will explain that Anna Walsh's DNA was found from items in the dumpster, including drugs, the hatchet, and the hacksaw. Jem Mutlu said goodbye to Anna Walsh about 1 o'clock, 1:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. When he left, she was home, she was alive, she was with her husband. No one has seen her since her husband said she left on January 1st. She has not accessed her finances, her email, her phone has made no calls, and no one has found her body. During this case, we ask two things. The first is that you keep an open mind. Do not rush to judgment, but instead, see how all the evidence fits together. Pay careful attention to the timing of certain events. And second, use your common sense. Don't leave it home. Bring it with you here as you make your examination of every piece of evidence. And at the end of this trial, we will speak to you one more time. And it is at that time we will ask that you find the defendant guilty of murdering his wife with deliberate premeditation. Thank you.
Thank you, 88 Connor. Judge, why don't you take a break and stand up, shake a leg. And when you're comfortable and have regained your focus, you may be seated. Now we'll hear from the defense for the opening statements. Attorney Tipton.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brian Walsh lied to the police. Lied to him on January 4th, lied to him on January 5th, lied to him on January 7th. Brian Walsh went to Lowe's and bought tools. Brian Walsh went to Home Depot and bought tools. Brian Walsh, beginning about 4:54 a.m., began a frantic and tragic search that you'll hear about. You'll hear the evidence of that. You will hear evidence that those searches evolved from how best to dispose of a body to even darker subject matter. As he wrestled with the fact that Anna Walsh was dead. That evidence that you will hear will be hard to understand, but it is true. On January 1st of 2023, Jim Mutlow left the family home of Brian and Anna Walsh sometime between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. Anna and Brian Walsh continued to celebrate the New Year's. They went upstairs to the bedroom. About an hour later, you'll hear evidence that Mr. Walsh got up, went back downstairs to clean the kitchen. You'll see evidence that he looked at his email. You'll hear evidence that he then returned to the bedroom, intending nothing more than to crawl into bed with Anna Walsh, the woman he loved. When he entered the bedroom and began to get into the bed, he sensed something was wrong. You will hear evidence that it made no sense to him. But he nudged Anna, his wife. She didn't respond. He nudged her again, a little harder. She didn't respond. He nudged her now in a frantic and panic reaction to where she actually rolled off the bed. You'll hear evidence that now he is panicking and he doesn't understand what has happened and what is happening. It didn't make any sense to him. It didn't make sense that somebody that he had just been with and enjoyed New Year's Eve into New Year's Day would suddenly be dead. Not innocent. You will hear evidence in this case of sudden, unexplained death. You will hear evidence that it is rape. You will hear evidence that it happens in young people and old people. You will hear evidence it happens in male and female. You will hear evidence it happens during the day and during the night, that it happens to trained athletes. You will hear evidence that it can be the result of both mechanical and or electrical problems within the body. You will hear evidence that it might be cardiovascular, pulmonary, neurological, or other reasons. You will hear evidence that it occurs in people who have never manifested a symptom that something might be wrong. And in fact, you will hear evidence that sometimes the first manifestation that something is or was wrong with someone is the sudden, unexplained death. That's the evidence you will hear in this case. Sudden, unexplained death is known within the medical community and the forensic community. But it is to this day not well understood, and that is the evidence you will hear. And it is not well known to non-medical professionals. And you will hear evidence Brian Walsh never imagined somebody suddenly died. 1 hour he's with her, he cleans the kitchen, he comes back up, and she is dead. You will hear evidence in this case that Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh loved each other. Yes, there was stress in the marriage. Stress born out of a simple problem that took its toll. And that's the pending federal case that had begun in 2018 and was still going forward. And what happened was, over time, Anna Walsh got a job in D.C. with the support of Brian Walsh. It was a huge stepping stone in her career. It paid twice the salary. And they talked about it. And you will hear evidence that they had to make a decision. Brian could not leave Cohasset because of the pending federal case. So who would take care of the children? Well, Anna worked in D.C. Brian would. And he did. There was stress in commuting back and forth between D.C. and Cohasset. Brian Walsh experienced that stress too. And Anna Walsh and him talked. They talked about it on Christmas Day of 2022. And that's what the evidence will be. Yes, there was an affair. You will hear evidence of an affair. An affair does not make someone a bad person, does not make someone a bad mother. Make no mistake about that. But yes, there was an affair, not between Brian Walsh and anyone, but between Anna Walsh and William Casper. The evidence in this case will be that Anna Walsh did everything she could to hide that affair. That she did not tell her closest friends, her confidants, some of whom lived in D.C., the same person, Alyssa Kirby, that she spent December 29th with, drinking and talking about her life. She hid the affair. William Vasco will tell you that he was unaware of any plans of Anna ever telling Brian about the affair. William Festo will testify that they behaved differently in public in D.C. to make sure there was no appearance of the affair. William Festo will testify that Anna Walsh told him she would be devastated if Brian ever learned about the affair. Brian Walsh didn't know about the affair. He did know. Anna Walsh had a crush on William Festo because she told him. And he did not react in a jealous way. And you will hear evidence that over the close to decade that these two people were in love. And all you have to do is look at the evidence and the photograph you'll see of Anna Walsh. And the evidence will establish she is a beautiful woman. And it was not unusual for her to comment to Brian. I had some man look at me today. I think he liked her. That didn't upset Brian, not over a period of 10 years. And when she told him that she had a crush on William Festo, the man who had sold them the $1.3 million townhouse in D.C., it didn't upset Brian. He trusted her. In fact, you will hear evidence from Melissa Kirby that Anna Walsh told her, I wish you would be jealous. You will hear evidence that there was no financial issues or problems. Anna Walsh had just got that job in the early part of 2022 that paid close to $300,000 a year. They owned that townhouse in D.C. It was worth over $1 million. They owned whole life insurance policies on their sons in the amount of $1 million each. Whole life that you will hear you can borrow against if you need.
We will get back to the opening statements there in the murder trial for Brian Walsh. First, a break here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Back now at 10:35 on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We get you back out to the opening statements in the Brian Walsh murder trial happening out of Dedham, Massachusetts. This is the man who is accused of killing his wife, Anna, who disappeared on New Year's Day back in 2023.
The area. Bethesda. Annapolis. They're searching for future investment property for the future. You'll see that, and you'll hear evidence that then she comes up to celebrate Christmas with Brian and their 3 beautiful boys. You'll see on 12/27, now that she's back in D.C., these text messages between them. And they're talking about one of their properties. And they're talking about the fact that it, in fact, sold. So now they need to figure out what to do with the proceeds. You'll see on 12/28, text exchange between Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh. Now, she's back in D.C. She's not feeling well. She's telling Brian, I don't feel well. So I'm going to stay at home and work at home today in D.C. And they joke. And on the text, Brian says something like, well, I guess I'll have to get you a plunger. Anna responds, I'll tell you what. I'll buy the plunger. You buy me that Porsche. Why? Because Anna Walsh wanted a Porsche. And what you see on that text exchange, right after she says that, is you'll see postings that he sent to her of the Porsches he'd been shopping for the woman he loved. And you'll see in his MacBook that he was shopping for Porsches because she had asked for one. On 12/29, you'll see a text exchange between them where they're talking about a 3-story brownstone that she had found that maybe they'll buy for investment. And you'll see the text references to how much it cost, the square footage it's up and below. You'll see text exchange between them where they're talking about possible renovations in the future. They are talking about the future. And this is on 12/29. And then on 12/30, simple texts between them about her catching her flight from D.C. to get to Cohasset for New Year's. She texts him, I've landed. And what you see in those text messages are she begins to send Brian pictures of her playing with the boys now that she's reunited with her 3 beautiful boys again. And then you see 7 pictures sent by Brian Walsh back to Anna, taken of her playing with the boys. And how do they sign off these texts? You'll see them. Brian says, love you. And Anna Walsh says, love you too. We've come full circle in this opening, and now we're back to New Year's Eve. And Jim Mutlow, the family friend, is invited by Anna to come to the house to celebrate New Year's Eve. You'll hear evidence that he was thrilled. He was thrilled to be with 2 people he'd known for years, but he hadn't seen in some time. He knew their kids, 3 beautiful boys. He'll describe how when he drove up in the driveway, Anna Walsh ran down the driveway in her heels, no coat, on a cold winter day to hug him. And then what happened? They all went into the house. And what was occurring in the house? Brian was cooking. New Year's. He was feeding them as they all talked for 4 to 5 hours. And what were they talking about? They were talking about the future. They were talking about investments. Anna Walsh told a story about how Brian had found a ring for her and the whole adventure of finding the ring and buying the ring. And she talked about it in glowing terms when she talked about how Brian did that. Mr. Mutlow will describe that for the 4 or 5 hours that he was there, he saw no problems between them. that Brian was happy and Anna was happy. He described the atmosphere as jovial, festive. He described it as loving. As adults do for New Year's Eve, they celebrated with wine and champagne. You will have that box, or at least photographs of that champagne box, where they signed it. And what Anna signed on that box she wrote, "Let's make 2023 the best one yet." She went on to say, courage, love, perseverance, compassion, joy, and signed it, love, Anna. Nothing was more important to both Anna and Brian but those three beautiful boys. They had talked about the problem of the federal case. It was stressful. When you heard in the Commonwealth's opening the reference to a divorce search, please understand that the other evidence will be that that singular search occurred between conversations between Anna and Brian about the sale of their property. You'll see that that search occurred about 8:30 on 12/27. And why is that important? The evidence will show that the only time Anna Walsh talked about divorce with William Fastow, she talked about it in terms of Brian and I attempting to preserve the family assets. Why is that important? Because yes, there was $400,000 of restitution that was going to come due. And yes, Brian may have had to go to prison for some time. And what did that mean? It meant that there was going to have to be arrangements, not just to pay the money, which wasn't going to be a problem, but the boys had to move up to D.C. because Brian could no longer take care of them. And there would be all that added expense. And they went so far as to talk to Robin Howe, their nanny, their babysitter, and asked her if she would consider moving up. So there were expenses. So when you talk about preserving the family assets, you have to decide, how is it that I make sure, how is it, as Brian Walsh will tell you, how is it that I make sure that my wife and my three sons are financially secure if I have to go to prison for a day, for a week, for a month, or for years? That's what they were talking about. And in all of the other digital data that the Commonwealth has been poring over for 2 years, you will not hear evidence of any other conversations about divorce. And you won't hear it from William Fastow. In fact, William Fastow will tell you he had resigned himself to think Anna Walsh was never going to leave Brian, father of their children. Jim Mutlow left around 1:30. Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh went upstairs. He went back down to the kitchen about an hour later to clean it up. And then the impossible, the unimaginable happened. It didn't make sense to Brian Walsh. It was confusing. He never thought anybody would believe.
And we need to get back to a break here on Live Impact News on WCNC+. We'll be right back. At 10:47 here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. How about them Panthers, huh? Wow, what a weekend. Panthers beat the Rams in an upset at home, 31-28. You're looking at a live picture right now at the bank. It might be cold and gray and partly cloudy, but things are sunny and blue and teal and all the feels from Panthers Nation. We have our Nick Carboni from last night's recap with Locked On Julian Council on the backside of yesterday's win. This is their feature now on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Here with Locked On Panthers host Julian Council at Bank of America Stadium after a jaw-dropping 31-28 victory over the NFC-leading LA Rams. Julian, do we put this victory for the Panthers in the category of course they did?
I think so. In this 2025 season, we just don't know what we're going to get week to week with this Panthers team. We've seen them start off 0-2. We've seen them win 30-0 against the Falcons. We've seen them get blown out by the Bills and the Patriots. We saw them win at Lambeau Field, and we saw them lose to the Saints, and then what we saw today. Anything is possible with this Carolina Panthers team, which makes them just so confounding, but also kind of fun to cover because you just don't know what you're going to get. And walking to the stadium this morning, no, I didn't think they were going to win this game. I didn't think this is going to be a competitive game. And now sitting here hours afterwards, well, yeah, I guess that shouldn't have been that surprising considering all that we've seen this year.
Dave Canales got summarily roasted for his game plan and the lack of runs in it on Monday night. 6 days later, he goes from 6 running back handoffs to 35. What did you make of his kind of bounce back play calling and the way that came together?
Yeah, he said on Tuesday after reviewing the film that he has to be better in making the run game come alive. And as you mentioned, 9 running back carries, 6 for Rico Dowdle, 3 for Chuba Hubbard on Monday night. On the opening drive of the game, 6 for the running back. So very clearly, Dave was not just going to say, he was going to practice what he preached on Monday. And it was good to see because I felt like going into this game, they needed to try to get Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard both going. And we had seen, honestly, in recent weeks, the old Chuba Hubbard was coming into form as he's gotten healthier, as he's gotten more into the rhythm of this offense this season. And they hadn't run the ball well the last 3 weeks as they've been 1-2. You go back to those 5 weeks where they were 4-1, they ran it really well with Rico, and Chuba was banged up. But now you're finally getting what I think they all wanted to have going to the season. And Rico even told us after the game in the locker room, his expectation was it's going to look like it did today, where he had 18 carries and Chuba Hubbard had 17. He was thinking it was going to be this two-headed monster, and I've always felt like this was the positive for the Panthers to have 2 backs of this caliber, in that it's better to have this than to just have one guy being the bell cow. And now seeing this with the bye week, headed the next 4 weeks, this may be the best version of this Panthers offense that we saw today against LA.
All right, they run to set up the pass, so that's how we're going to do it. Bryce Young, 200-plus yards. I mean, was this kind of the actual Bryce Young? We saw 448, and we saw another bad performance Monday night. What did you think of 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns on 4th down?
Yeah, and some of the throws, you speak of that 4th down, the one in the 3rd quarter, the 4th and 3 throw to Jalen Coker, quite possibly the best throw we've seen from Bryce in his career here in Carolina. Even the 4th and 2 to Terrell McMillan right here behind us. That was another excellent throw as he stood in the pocket, waited for the play to develop, and found T-Mac wide open down the field. And just the naked boot as well. Bryce played within himself. And he was also asked to do more than we saw him asked to be doing on Monday night in that loss against the 49ers. So this is what you want to see. You want to see balance. And we have not really seen a balanced offensive attack. Maybe the game against Dallas, we really have not seen them run the ball as effectively and then have Bryce not only hit deep shots, but find things intermediate and also take care of the football. That's a huge piece of this game today as they won a turnover battle 3-0. So great bounce back for him. And I do think that this could be the real Bryce Young. It's just we don't know after the bye what you're going to see down in New Orleans. But if he can be this could be good enough for Carolina in the final month of the season to finally break down that wall and get back into the playoffs.
Staying with Bryce, Dan Morgan's not making that 5th-year option decision here behind us tonight.
No.
And I won't ask you directly whether he should, because we do that every week. I'll stay away from that.
Yeah.
But when a quarterback has 11 fourth-quarter comebacks in 2.5 pro seasons. That shows you something about what he could be for a franchise, doesn't
Well,
it?
absolutely. And when you look at the number, it's not just 11 game-winning drives. He has 5 this year, by the way, which is the most in the NFL. It's not just 11 since he entered the league. It's 11, which Patrick Mahomes has 10.
Yeah.
Josh Allen has 9. Jalen Hurts, maybe not the same as Mahomes and Allen, but Super Bowl champion. He has 9. That's what you want. And those are the things we talk about with franchise quarterbacks. And you look at the Panthers organization and fans back in 2020, what was one of the biggest complaints that fans had that year? The inability for Teddy Bridgewater to help lead this team down the field on either a game-winning or game-tying drive. We have now seen 5 times Bryce do this year and 11 times in his career. So that says a lot about when you need it most, he's made some of those plays. And I also give a lot of credit to the defense and the play that Derek Brown made to close out that game, because it's not the first time that they've done that. You saw it against Miami, you saw it against Dallas as well, that you have a closer potentially in Bryce Young who's shown it multiple times throughout his career. So yeah, man, like that's a big piece. We'll see the next 4 games and how that plays out, because obviously that will go into the calculus of what they decide to do in a decision that doesn't have to be made, by the way, until May. But it's certainly going to be a positive as far as if they want to retain him at the 5th-year option.
Let's finish with that defense, which finished the game, and they really started it. I mean, Carolina had a 7-0 lead, but then they get the first pick of Matt Stafford. Then they get another one for 6. I mean, this guy had 2 interceptions all year. He comes in and leaves back to California with 2 more. Carolina without Pro Bowler J.C. Horn, without a starting safety, a starting linebacker. How did this defense pull that off?
Yeah, it's 2 interceptions. Is also a fumble that they forced. 3 takeaways. The second straight week we've seen that. Now, it's different. I think Matthew Stafford clearly going to this game was the MVP favorite. Brock Purdy, he's been banged up this year. He's been someone who's been susceptible to turning the ball over. That has not been Matthew Stafford. As you mentioned, it was so important too on that second drive where clearly LA, knowing that Derek Brown was out there, but you don't have J.C. Horn, you don't have Trevon Merrick who's suspended, you're starting Shaw Smith-Wade, you're having to start Lathan Ransom, the rookie. The fact that those guys are giving up a lot of yardage. There were some blown plays there to be able to get that interception, that tip by DB, picked up by Nick Scott. Then on the next drive, the pick 6 by Mike Jackson, who almost had one against Atlanta, should have had one potentially against Green Bay, finally had that happen. It's just guys stepping up and doing their jobs. You need it at some point in time this season. The Panthers aren't the only team dealing with injuries, dealing with suspension late in the season. You have to have guys step up. And they say it all the time. It all sounds cliche, but it's true. You have to have guys step up when their numbers called, and that happened today, not just with the big names like Derek Brown and I guess to a lesser extent Mike Jackson, but also seeing some of the plays that Shaw Smith-Wade made, and Lathan Ransom had a sack of Matthew Stafford as well, one of the 2 that they had in this game. So I give a lot of credit to those players and also a Jerry Rivero and a unit that he's been able to put out there and have succeed today, and also in a few of the other games I mentioned earlier where they've been able to close out and get these wins.
All right, 7-6. They're a game above 500 entering December. Been a long time since we could say that. You get the bye week, then they're at the Saints. A lot of big division games to close the year.
Yeah.
This team has confidence. Can they find consistency now?
That's the big thing, and I was talking to Austin Corbett about that, where, look, man, you guys are 0-2. You got the win. We know all the ups and downs that we've seen this season, which have made this team just so mercurial and also like frustrating, but yet I'm sure from a fan perspective, even from a media perspective, like a fun team, an enjoyable team really to cover, but that has to end. And he said that they can't keep doing this to where you beat Green Bay, you lay an egg to a 1-win team. You get the big win against Atlanta with the passing game, you do what happened on Monday, then you come around and do this. They have to finally find that. And it's going to come down to taking care of the football, continuing the balance that they had offensively today, and that's not just Bryce in the pass game, that's having both Rico and Chuba go out there and run the ball hard behind an offensive line where standard has not dropped off at all, and they can continue to get some takeaways. Like, that's been major in these last 2 games. Even if they didn't win on Monday, that's still a big piece of what they can potentially do here the final month of the season against some of these teams. They can do that. That will finally have them at the consistency that they need to have. So we know that they're resilient. We know that they can bounce back. We know they're capable of beating what I thought and still think is the best team in the NFL, and even Green Bay's a good team. We know they're capable of that, but are they capable of being consistent in doing what you need to do in December to be a playoff team? We'll find out. I think they have all the keys, all the formula to do it. It's just actually putting it out there on the field on Sunday when they get back in 2 weeks down in New Orleans.
Julian Council from Locked On Panthers. He's going to be talking about this win for 2 weeks. Panthers on the bye.
And I know our Nick Sturdivant is very happy about that. What a great, exciting win for the Panthers. Go Cats. All right, while we close out the last couple of minutes here on Live Impact News for this portion of the day, wanted to take a look around and what's happening live. The New York Stock Exchange down to 28.29 on this Monday morning. And first full week back at it as the stocks go down. As tech slides, James?
Yeah, I mean, NVIDIA made some news this morning, and so they're pretty much one of the few stocks that are up this morning, Jane, but overall the tech industry is down on this Cyber Monday.
This is why I don't look every day. All right. What I would look at if I am traveling, though, at Charlotte Douglas, we are looking at some delays. James, how many?
Just a small handful, a couple dozen, but they are impacting flights across the country as these planes are waiting to go into airports, Jane, that are currently experiencing winter weather.
Yeah, that winter weather is, we're getting it, of course, here a little bit, but not as bad as it could be out there in the Midwest. So take it easy out there as you make your plans for the week and return home, whatever you're doing this week, as we start this first day of December and meteorological winter. Isn't that today, too?
That is today.
All right. See, James knows everything. I have to go to him many times when it comes to space, exploration, travel, tech, stocks.
That's what I'm here for. Trains,
and automobiles, actually. All right, we will leave you with Charlotte today. That is coming up at 11. Have a great morning.